After finishing Think and Grow Rich, or well, not even finishing, just reading the first few pages, I had to pause. I actually closed the book, sat back, and asked myself, do I actually want the things I say I want? Not in a vague, yeah, that'd be nice kind of way, but in the way that says, I need this like oxygen. The first lesson that hit me, like really hit me, was about desire. Not casual desire, not Pinterest board kind of desire, but the kind of want that keeps you up at night because your soul knows it's non-negotiable. And it made me uncomfortable, because it made me realize that for a long time I'd been confusing wishing with deciding. Reading Hill's words, I saw it so clearly. We wish for money, we wish for freedom, we wish for success, but we rarely draw the line in the sand and say, this is happening, I'm all in. Hill makes this distinction so clear in the book. He talks about burning desire, as in, you either must have it or forget it. And that phrase, burning desire, felt a bit dramatic at first. But the more I sat with it, the more I realized he's right. There's this story he shares about Edwin Barnes. This guy didn't have credentials, no impressive background, but he wanted to work with Thomas Edison, not as an employee, but as a partner. So he just showed up, took a train, no money, no backup plan. He didn't wait to be qualified. He just made the decision and let everything else catch up later. And that really stuck with me. Because today, we romanticize the idea of chasing dreams, but so many of us are still waiting to feel ready, waiting for clarity, waiting for a sign, waiting until our idea is perfect, our resume is polished, our fear is gone. But what this book reminded me is, clarity doesn't come before commitment. Commitment comes first. Clarity shows up later. So I asked myself, what would it look like if I took one of my I wish goals and treated it like a no matter what decision? Not just something I hope happens someday, but something I would actually take uncomfortable action toward every day, whether I feel like it or not. And Hill gives this super practical 6-step method in the book to turn desire into reality, which surprised me, honestly. I thought the book would stay vague or motivational, but no, he breaks it down like a system. Pick the amount of money you want. Pick the date. Pick what you're willing to give up for it. Write it down. Say it out loud every day, morning and night, with emotion. Visualize it, believe it, become obsessed with it. And I tried it. I wrote my goal down, read it in the morning, read it again before bed. At first it felt awkward, then repetitive, and then real. Like my brain started to believe me. It's wild how we'll recite negative thoughts to ourselves all day long, but say something hopeful and intentional. That feels weird. That part made me realize just how much reprogramming I still need to do. But this first chapter, it shook something in me. It didn't teach me something new. It reminded me of something I'd been avoiding. That desire is not about inspiration. It's about a decision, one you remake every day. Not once a year, not on New Year's Eve, every day. I think the real magic of Think and Grow Rich is that it doesn't hype you up. It calls you out, gently, quietly, but deeply. So if you're like me, someone who says, I want more, but hasn't moved like it, go back to that first page. Ask yourself what you're really willing to want, not because it sounds good, but because your life depends on it. And then decide, because the rest of the book, it only works after that. And the thing is, once you make that decision, that real, full-body decision about what you want, something weird happens. Doubt shows up, like clockwork. You say, I'm gonna hit this income goal, and your brain goes, yeah, but how? You've never done that before. What if you fail? What will people think? That voice is automatic. It's quiet sometimes loud, but it's always waiting to test you right after you declare something big. And I guess the next thing I realized, the next thing this book reminded me, is that belief doesn't come naturally. You have to build it, on purpose. You have to train your brain to trust you again. And honestly, that part hit harder than I thought it would. Because I've let myself down before. I've set goals and then ghosted them. Said I'd launch the project, didn't. Said I'd wake up earlier, snoozed the alarm. Said I'd go all in, but I didn't. So when I started writing my new goal down, reading it out loud, morning and night, part of me didn't believe it. I could feel it. Like the words were there. The desire was real. But the belief? Shaky. And that's when the book punched me in the face a little, in a gentle way. It said belief isn't something you wait for, it's something you repeat into existence. Not once, not when you feel good, but every day, when it feels boring, when it feels fake, when it feels like no one's watching, especially then. Because your subconscious doesn't know the difference between truth and repetition. It just takes what you say the most and runs with it. You say, "I'm bad with money every day." Cool. Your brain will find ways to prove that. You say, "I always find a way." Same thing. Your brain starts scanning for solutions instead of obstacles. So I tried something new. I didn't just write the goal, I wrote the belief I needed to match it. And every morning I started saying, "I am a person who follows through. I create value and people pay for it. I'm allowed to win. I am building something real." And I'll be honest, I didn't believe every word at first, but the more I said it, the less awkward it felt. And then something subtle shifted. I started making choices that lined up with those words. Not huge leaps, just small, consistent alignment. Like the words became a mirror, and I didn't want to be out of sync with them anymore. That was the lesson I didn't expect. That belief isn't just a mindset, it's a muscle, and you don't wait for it to grow, you train it with repetition, with feeling, with imagery. You don't just read the affirmation, you close your eyes and see it. You feel it like it's already happening. You imagine the version of you who already crossed the finish line, and then you speak from that place, not to it, from it. That version of you already exists, and every time you speak as if they're real, you get closer. So yeah, desire is the start, but belief is the bridge. And no one builds that bridge for you. You have to say the words, even when they shake, especially when they shake, because that's when they start to stick. You know what's wild? Once you start speaking your goals out loud, once you commit to belief, you realize how often you've been saying the opposite without even noticing. Not out loud maybe, but in your head. The self-talk, the little under-the-breath commentary, the casual, almost automatic self-doubt, stuff like, "I'm not good with business. I've never been a numbers person. People like me don't get rich. It's probably too late anyway. It's already been done." And the classic, "Who am I to do this?" Yeah, that one shows up a lot. And that's when I started to really get it. We're always telling ourselves something. The only question is, what story are we repeating the most? Because the brain listens, not just when you're being intentional, but when you're casual, off guard, on autopilot. That's what this part of the book brought into sharp focus for me. It's not enough to have belief. You have to protect it, reinforce it, every single day. Because whether you're aware of it or not, you're already practicing autosuggestion. That's not some mystical term. It just means you're constantly feeding your mind messages. The only difference is whether those messages are helping you or sabotaging you. And honestly, when I looked at mine, they weren't great. Even after I'd started writing down my goals, even after I'd declared what I wanted, my default thoughts weren't aligned. So I started paying attention, not judging, just listening. And it was shocking how easily the doubts slipped in. Not because I meant to, but because they were familiar. So I did what the book suggested. I rewrote the script, not the whole life plan, just a handful of deliberate thoughts, written out, spoken daily, anchored in emotion. That last part is key, because this isn't about saying something like a robot. It's about connecting to the words like they're already true, feeling the future you now, speaking from that place. So your subconscious starts to treat it like fact. I kept it simple. I create value that people want and need. My work is meaningful and profitable. I'm consistent. I'm growing. I don't give up. Every morning, every night, out loud, with feeling. Some days it felt cheesy. Some days it felt powerful. Some days I didn't believe it at all. But I said it anyway, because the version of me I'm becoming, they say it every day. They don't wait for proof. They speak like it's already done. And slowly, I started to act like them. I reached out when I used to hesitate. I hit publish when I wanted to hide. I showed up even when it felt small, because I knew every rep counts. That's the power of suggestion. You don't convince yourself through logic. You condition yourself through repetition. Just like working out. Just like muscle memory. It's not about hype. It's not about motivation. It's about wiring something deeper, something permanent. And the wildest thing is, once you start speaking to yourself differently, you start noticing different things, new ideas, new energy, new people, new chances. Like your brain starts filtering reality through a new lens. And maybe that's the real point. You don't just grow rich by thinking, you grow by thinking on purpose. You grow by choosing which voice gets to be the loudest in your mind. And the more often that voice sounds like your future, the faster you'll get there. It's funny how once you start shifting the way you talk to yourself, you realize how much of life is built around stories you didn't even write. Like how you're supposed to work, how success is measured, what's worth learning and what's not. There's this moment I had flipping through the book where the author starts talking about specialized knowledge, and I almost skimmed past it because I thought, okay, yeah, knowledge is power. I've heard that before. But then he said something that stopped me. General knowledge, no matter how vast, is of little use in the accumulation of money. And I had to sit with that because, wow, that's basically the opposite of how most of us were raised. We're told to know a little of everything, to keep our options open, to be well-rounded. And sure, that's useful in trivia nights and awkward networking events. But when it comes to building something meaningful, whether that's a business, a brand, a craft, or even just your personal edge in this world, what matters is not how much you know, but what you can do with what you know. It made me ask myself, what do I know deeply? What have I actually mastered to the point where someone would pay me for it? And maybe more importantly, what am I willing to go deeper into, even if it means letting go of the idea of being good at everything? Because that's the trade-off. Depth requires focus, and focus means not chasing every shiny thing that crosses your feed. I realized I was kind of hoarding knowledge. Podcasts, ebooks, courses, YouTube rabbit holes, so much input, so little application. That's when it clicked. This part of the book wasn't about go get a degree or go back to school. It was more like double down on what matters. Get very good at something that has very real value. Doesn't mean you need to be the best in the world, but you need to be the best version of you doing that thing. For me, that meant narrowing down what I offer, not to be less, but to go deeper. Because that's where momentum lives. That's where reputation builds. That's where results compound. And honestly, it's more fun. Learning with a purpose, learning because it feeds your mission, learning with the intention to act on it, not just archive it, that's a different energy. So I made a list. What do I want to be known for? What kind of problems do I love solving? What kind of questions do people already come to me for? And once I had that, I asked, what do I need to learn next to become unshakable in this space? Not more, just next. And I started learning with action in mind. I'd read one page, then build something. Watch a video, then test it. Listen to a podcast, then pitch myself, write a post, tweak my system. No more stockpiling, no more someday I'll use this. Because the world doesn't reward knowledge, it rewards applied knowledge. It rewards people who move. So yeah, the lesson here wasn't learn more. It was learn better, learn deeper, learn to do. And don't wait to be an expert to begin. You become one by doing. It's strange, isn't it? How the older we get, the more we treat imagination like something childish, like it's only meant for kids playing pretend or for artists and daydreamers who don't live in the real world. But lately I've been thinking, what if imagination is actually one of the most practical tools we've got? Because every product we use, every company we admire, every lifestyle we envy, it all started in someone's head. Before the strategy, before the funding, before the business plan, there was just a picture in someone's mind. And that's what this part of the book unlocked for me. That imagination isn't about escaping reality. It's about building the next version of it. See, I used to think imagination was about creativity. Now I realize it's also about courage. Because when you imagine something that doesn't exist yet, especially for yourself, you're taking a risk. You're betting on something only you can see right now. And I think that's what separates people who create from people who just cope. One is driven by a vision. The other is trapped by what already is. The moment I got serious about creating my future, not just hoping for it, but mentally rehearsing it, I started noticing the way imagination influences behavior. Like, when I really imagine what it feels like to hit my income goals, I show up differently. I send emails I would have hesitated to write. I speak more clearly. I take risks that feel aligned, not reckless. Because I've seen the version of me who already lives that life. Not in a delusional way, not fake it till you make it. More like, Remind yourself until you remember who you're becoming. So now I've built this little habit. Every morning, before I open my inbox, I close my eyes for 2 minutes and run a mental movie. What does my day look like as the version of me who's already built the thing? What kind of calls am I on? What kind of people am I around? What kind of energy do I give off? What kind of decisions do I make without hesitation? And that 2-minute movie, it sets the tone. It's like preloading my brain with better instructions. Because here's the thing, your mind doesn't know the difference between imagination and memory. It just takes whatever you replay the most and builds around it. If all you feed it is stress, fear, comparison, don't be surprised when your decisions start playing defense instead of offense. But if you feed it vision, clear, vivid, detailed vision, then suddenly the little things you used to avoid, they become part of the plan. You're not doing them because you should. You're doing them because they match the future you've already seen. That's the power of imagination. It's not a fantasy, it's a blueprint. And if you don't make space for it, someone else's version of the future will become yours by default. So yeah, now when I catch myself saying, I don't know how to do this, I pause. And instead of Googling more information, I ask myself a better question. What does it look like when it's done? Because if I can picture that clearly enough, the steps will start revealing themselves. Imagination isn't the escape from work, it's where real work begins. So once you've seen it in your head, the life, the project, the version of you that feels fully alive, the next question is always the same. Now what? What do I do with this? Because vision without action, it's just another nice daydream. And I think that's where most of us get stuck. We wait for the perfect plan, the 10-step roadmap, the certainty, the signs. But no matter how clearly we imagine the future, there comes a moment where we have to do the messy, unsexy thing, make a plan, and start. Even if it's wrong, even if we're not ready, even if the first version sucks. What this part of the book made me realize painfully is that planning is not about perfection. It's about movement. It's the bridge between imagination and execution. And no one's building it for you. So yeah, I had the goal written out. I had the belief starting to grow. I had this clearer and clearer picture of what success might actually look like. But when I looked at my calendar, at my actual to-do list, there was a big gap. A dream-sized gap with no scaffolding underneath it. So I sat down, no fluff, and wrote out the most basic thing I could. If this goal were guaranteed, what's the first imperfect step I could take this week? Just one. Not 10, not build the whole thing. Just, what would future me do first? And when I answered that, I did it, that day. Didn't overthink it, didn't wait for motivation. And here's the part I didn't expect. Momentum came after the action, not before. I used to think you plan when you feel inspired. Now I know, you feel inspired because you're finally doing what you said you would. The plan doesn't need to be brilliant. It just needs to exist. It just needs to give you direction. The moment you commit to a plan, even a basic one, your brain starts rearranging things. You stop scrolling as much. You stop saying yes to stuff that drains you. You feel a little more serious. Because now it's real. Even if it's tiny, it's real. And if your plan doesn't work, good. Now you've got something to adjust. Now you're learning instead of guessing. Now you're in motion. But if there's no plan, there's no feedback loop. Just hoping. And hoping is exhausting when it's not paired with action. So now I treat my plans like drafts. I don't need them to be perfect. I need them to be active. They're alive. I update them weekly. I write down what I'll do, when I'll do it, and what success looks like this week. Not someday. This week. And I stop trying to build in isolation. I tell a friend. I ask for help. I get feedback sooner. Because even the best plans collapse in your head. They need to breathe. They need pressure. They need daylight. All of this has taught me something simple, but kind of sacred. Planning isn't about predicting the future. It's about declaring that you're no longer waiting to be rescued by it. The funny thing about plans is, you can make them, update them, color code them, and still not move. You can have the vision, the goal, the belief, the whole calendar mapped out, but if you hesitate when it's time to choose, nothing happens. That was the next punch in the gut I got from reading. It made me realize that one of the most underrated forms of power is being decisive. Not impulsive, not reckless, but clear, quietly, unshakably clear. And honestly, that's not me by default. I overthink, I crowdsource everything. I sit on an idea way too long, convincing myself I'm just being thorough when really I'm just scared. Scared to be wrong, scared to be judged. Scared that if I choose one thing, I'm saying no to 100 other possibilities. But the truth is, indecision is just another way to stay safe, a disguised version of fear. Because if you don't choose, you can't fail, right? But here's the thing, not choosing is a choice, and it usually leads to nowhere. This part of the book, it didn't offer comfort. It was more like a mirror. It showed me how much energy I've lost to hesitation, how many ideas I've quietly let die because I waited too long to back myself. And it wasn't just about big life decisions. It's the small stuff too. Do I send the pitch or not? Do I post this or keep tweaking it? Do I try the thing or keep collecting info just a little longer? And what I noticed is this: the more I delayed, the heavier it got. The task didn't get smaller with time. It grew into a mountain of self-doubt. But every time I just decided, even imperfectly, I felt lighter. There's something powerful about making a call and backing it. Even if it turns out to be wrong, you learn, you adjust, you move, but you're no longer stuck in limbo. And honestly, limbo is where dreams go to die. So I started experimenting with this. Whenever I catch myself swirling in overthinking, I ask, if I trusted myself fully, what would I choose right now? Then I do that. Not later, not next week, now. It's a practice, I'm still learning it. But it's one of the most freeing shifts I've made. Because once you start trusting your ability to choose, you start creating momentum that doesn't rely on anyone else. You stop looking for signs, you stop waiting for perfect. You stop outsourcing your clarity, you just act. And suddenly, the world responds to you differently. People trust people who trust themselves. Opportunities show up when you finally say yes to the ones already in front of you. So yeah, plans are nice, but what really changes things? The moment you say, this is what I'm doing and I'm not asking for permission, that's when the wheels start turning. Some days you feel like you're on fire. Everything clicks, you're in flow, ideas pour out, and other days, you stare at your screen, refresh your inbox, question every choice you've ever made, and start convincing yourself that maybe this just isn't gonna work out. It's wild how fast the high can turn into a spiral. One bad day, one slow week, one rejection, and suddenly the vision you were so clear on feels distant, like you made it up. That's where I was when I had to come back to this. Because wanting it badly is great, believing in it is powerful. Even having a plan and deciding to start, amazing. But none of it matters if you stop the second it gets uncomfortable. What this part of the book reminded me, in a way that was both humbling and necessary, is that persistence isn't some motivational quote. It's a discipline. It's a decision you make after the excitement wears off. It's saying, I'm still showing up, even when it's quiet, even when the numbers aren't moving, even when no one's clapping. Because the truth is, success doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes, it looks exactly like failure, right before it breaks through. And honestly, I've quit too early before. I've walked away from things I'll never know could have worked, simply because I didn't see results fast enough. And what I'm learning is that the difference between those who make it and those who don't isn't always talent, or luck, or resources. It's often just who kept going, who stayed when it wasn't fun, who showed up when no one was watching, who got rejected and still believed. So now, when I hit that low energy, that doubt, that voice that says, maybe just take a break from all this, I pause, I breathe, and I remind myself, this isn't a test of how good I am, it's a test of how long I'm willing to play the game. And yeah, persistence isn't loud, it's not flashy, no one throws you a party for being consistent. But in the long run, it's what separates dreamers from doers. It's what turns maybe into momentum. So I've stopped measuring success by outcomes alone. I measure it by returning. Did I return today? Did I keep the promise? Did I show up, even just a little? If yes, that's a win. If no, cool. Tomorrow's waiting. Because this path isn't about intensity, it's about endurance. And every time you keep going, especially when it's easier not to, you're teaching yourself that you're someone who doesn't quit on what matters. And that changes everything. At some point, you realize it's not just about how hard you work or how smart you are, or how big your dreams feel at 2 a.m. when you're high on inspiration and no one's texting you back. It's about who you let into your space, who you let speak into your life, who you let shape your thoughts, even when you're not aware of it. Because whether you like it or not, you're soaking up energy from the group chat, from your coworkers, from the creators you binge, from the people you vent to, from the voices you trust on your worst day. And if those voices are tired, cynical, safe, small, then no matter how big your dreams are, your daily mindset will start shrinking to match the room you're in. This hit me hard recently, because I was doing all the things, writing goals, planning my days, showing up online, reading the books, but I still felt like something was off, like I was speaking a language no one around me really understood. I'd say things like, I'm gonna hit this revenue mark, or I'm testing this new product, and people would just kind of smile, or change the subject, or say, that's cool, man, good luck. No challenge, no expansion, just surface level support, the kind that claps politely but doesn't hold you accountable. And I realized I needed something more, not hype, not a cheer squad, alignment. I needed people who were also building, also failing, also taking risks, also asking, what if we actually pull this off? So I started paying attention. Who in my life made me feel sharper after we talked? Who made me think bigger? Who made me want to get back to work after a phone call? And I started spending more time there, not in a forced networking way, but in a quiet, intentional way. Checking in, asking better questions, starting little accountability check-ins with people who get it. It wasn't some mastermind retreat. It was just me and a few others saying, let's not do this alone anymore. And that changed everything, because momentum multiplies in the right room. You get unstuck faster. You borrow belief on days you don't have your own. You get called out gently when you're playing small, and you stop being the smartest person in the conversation, which, let's be honest, is exactly where growth lives. So yeah, environment isn't just vibes, it's architecture. If you're building something big, a business, a body of work, a new version of your life, then you need people around you who are also building, who aren't scared of ambition, who don't roll their eyes when you talk about what you're reaching for. And if you don't have that yet, start small. Find one person, reach out, start a rhythm, talk weekly, share wins, share losses, dream out loud, together, because the path is still yours. But you don't have to walk it alone. And sometimes the right conversation at the right moment can save you months of doubt. There's a kind of energy we don't talk about much, at least not in a serious way. It's powerful, it's creative, it's impulsive, intense, instinctive, and when it's unchecked, it can be destructive. But when it's directed, when it's channeled, it becomes fuel, not just to get through the day, but to build something that lasts. And yeah, I'm talking about that kind of energy, the kind people usually tie to lust, attraction, romance, escape. But the book reframed it completely. It said, what if this isn't just about pleasure? What if this is one of your most potent creative forces, and you've been wasting it on distraction? And that line stayed with me, because when you think about it, so much of the hunger we carry, the restlessness, the craving for validation, intensity, closeness, it's energy looking for a home. And if you don't give it one, it finds shortcuts in addiction, in scrolling, in chasing, in surface-level highs. It leaks. But when you take that same desire, that same fire, and aim it toward your work, your art, your vision, your discipline, it sharpens you. It makes you unstoppable. I started noticing it in myself. On days when I felt restless or impulsive or like I needed to numb out, there was always something deeper underneath. Some part of me wasn't being expressed, not creatively, not purposefully. So I tried something weird. Instead of letting that energy drift into distraction, I redirected it into my work. I wrote, I created, I brainstormed, I recorded. And the result wasn't just productivity, it was depth. There was a different kind of heat behind what I made, like I was using every part of myself, not just my brain. And I think that's what this whole idea is about. It's not about suppressing desire, it's about translating it, taking that raw intensity and turning it into rhythm, into presence, into focus, into momentum. Because energy doesn't disappear, it just goes somewhere. And if you don't tell it where to go, it'll choose for you. So now I ask myself often, what am I really craving right now? And can I put that energy into something that will still matter tomorrow? Not every craving needs to be indulged. Some of them need to be invested. And if you do that enough, you don't just feel better in the moment. You build something that satisfies you at a level deeper than impulse ever could. It's strange to think about how much of your life is being driven by thoughts you didn't even choose, beliefs you didn't build, ideas you didn't question, voices that got planted when you were too young to even know they were taking root. And yet they're still here, whispering underneath your day, directing what you notice, what you ignore, what you think is possible, what you quietly avoid without ever asking why. This part of the book was quieter than the rest, but it felt deeper. It reminded me that the real work isn't just what you do when you're awake and intentional. It's what's running in the background when you're not paying attention. Your subconscious doesn't speak in words, it speaks in pattern, in feeling, in reaction. And most of us, we've been repeating the same loops for years. Not because we're lazy, not because we don't want change, but because our inner script, the one we never rewrote, is still playing on autopilot. The beliefs like, I'm not good with money, things always fall apart for me, people don't really support what I do, I always mess it up eventually, it's too late to start over. We don't say those things out loud, but we live like they're true. That's the real programming, and it's deep. But here's the hopeful part. Your subconscious can be reprogrammed. You just have to start speaking a new language, one it understands. And that language? Repetition, emotion, imagination. You feed it a new message. You say it not once, but daily. You attach real feeling to it. You visualize it like it's already here, and you keep doing it even when it feels like nothing's changing. Because it is, quietly, slowly, deeply. I started doing this for myself, wrote down a handful of simple truths I wanted to believe, not just intellectually, but instinctively. Stuff like, I'm worthy of ease, success is allowed to feel aligned, my work creates real value, I know how to recover when things get hard. And I started feeding them into my day like vitamins, not loud, not performative, just consistent. In the morning, before my mind starts sprinting, at night when it's quiet, in the car when my guard's down, in between tasks when my old patterns try to sneak back in. And slowly, I've noticed something shift. Not everything's perfect, not every fear disappears, but there's a new voice now, one that feels like me. Not the scared me, not the doubting me, but the version of me I've been becoming this whole time. And that voice, it's starting to speak first. That's the power of the subconscious. It will serve whatever master you give it. So give it something worth protecting. The more I study success, the more I realize it's not just about working harder. It's not even just about thinking smarter. It's about tuning in. Because your brain, it's not just a container for knowledge. It's an antenna. It's listening. It's broadcasting. And it's filtering reality based on whatever frequency you're tuned to. Now I know that sounds a little out there, but stay with me. You ever notice how when you buy a new car, suddenly you see that exact car everywhere? Or when you're anxious about something, you start interpreting every neutral moment as a threat? That's not magic. That's your brain's filtering system in action. It's called the reticular activating system. The thing that tells your brain what to notice, what to ignore. And that system listens to repetition and emotion. So if you constantly feed it thoughts of doubt, fear, scarcity, hesitation, guess what it starts showing you? Reasons to be scared, reasons to hesitate, reasons to hold back. But, and here's where it gets powerful, if you consistently feed it direction, vision, belief, desire, it'll start picking up signals you couldn't hear before. Opportunities you overlooked, ideas you ignored, people you'd normally scroll past. And suddenly the world doesn't change, but how you interact with it does. This part of the book reframed the way I see my own mental energy. Because if your thoughts are transmissions, then what are you broadcasting every day? Are you sending out, I'm ready, I'm building, I'm worth investing in? Or are you accidentally broadcasting, I'm not sure, I'm scared, I'll probably mess this up? You don't even have to say it. Energy leaks out in tone, in posture, in presence. And when you clean that signal, when you decide who you are and start thinking like it consistently, you stop blending in. You start resonating. And resonance is what draws things to you. It's not magic. It's not wishful thinking. It's just alignment. You become the kind of person that solutions stick to, ideas find their way to you. People trust you faster because your energy says, I've already decided, let's go. So now I treat my thoughts differently, less like noise, more like code. I ask, is what I'm thinking right now tuning me in or tuning me out? And if it's noise, I switch the frequency, not by force, just by choice. Because I'm learning this, your mind is a magnet, your thoughts are a signal. Your future is already out there, waiting for a clean connection. There's a kind of knowing that doesn't come from logic. It doesn't come from data or planning or experience. It comes from somewhere deeper. That quiet voice, the nudge. The moment of clarity that shows up out of nowhere, in the shower, on a walk, mid-conversation, right before you fall asleep. You can't explain it, but you feel it, and when you ignore it, you usually wish you hadn't. This part of the book didn't give formulas, no how-to, no checklist. It just pointed to something subtle, something sacred. The idea that once you've done the work, once you've cultivated desire, belief, imagination, persistence, direction, there's another layer that begins to open. It's like your intuition starts trusting you because now it sees you're serious. And when that happens, you start getting these flashes, ideas, hunches, gut feelings, sudden clarity on something you've been wrestling with for weeks. It doesn't feel like magic, it feels like memory, like remembering something you didn't know you knew. And that's the part that gets me, because I think deep down, we all do know. We've just been taught to ignore it, to second guess, to outsource our truth. But the version of you that already has the life you're building, that version is trying to speak to you, not loudly, not desperately, just patiently, waiting for you to get quiet enough to hear. So I've been learning to make space for that voice, not forcing it, just inviting it. Sometimes in the morning, before I touch my phone, sometimes during a walk with no podcast in my ears. Sometimes just by writing a question down and leaving the page blank for a while. And when the answer comes, it's rarely loud. It's soft, simple, clear. Do this, call them, let go, try again, say yes. And my only job is to trust it faster. Because every time I've listened to that voice, even when it made no sense in the moment, it's led me exactly where I needed to go. Maybe that's the final shift, learning that success isn't just something you chase. Sometimes, it's something you listen for. And when it shows up, you don't overanalyze it. You just say, I hear you, let's move. If you've made it this far, you already know this isn't just about getting rich. It never really was. It's about learning how to live with clarity, how to think on purpose, how to choose your thoughts the way you choose your clothes, and how to stop waiting for permission to become the person you already feel pulling at you from the inside. This journey, if you really take it seriously, it changes the way you move. You stop chasing hype. You stop outsourcing your belief. You stop talking about someday. And instead, you start building, quietly, steadily, in full alignment with the version of you you've been trying to become all along. You start measuring your days not by what went viral, but by whether or not you kept the promise, whether or not you moved the needle, even 1 inch, whether or not you returned to the work. And yeah, it gets lonely sometimes. There's no standing ovation when you choose discipline over distraction. No award ceremony for the mornings you show up when no one else sees it. But that's okay. Because the people who do this work, the deep, internal, nobody's clapping but I'm doing it anyway kind of work, they don't do it for the noise. They do it because something inside them said, I can't keep living like this. And something else replied, then let's begin. So if that's you, if something about this whole journey stirred something in your chest, or maybe reminded you of a truth you'd buried under all the busyness, then don't wait. You don't need another book. You don't need another podcast. You don't need a sign. You need a decision. To start now, with what you have, exactly where you are, and trust that every step you take in alignment will be met. The path ahead isn't guaranteed, but your integrity, your consistency, your vision, that's your insurance policy. So go build it. Not just a business, not just a brand, but a mind that holds its shape, a heart that doesn't quit on itself, and a life that finally feels like yours. Because if there's one thing I believe now, after walking through every page of this book, every reflection, every quiet shift, it's this. You don't get rich by chasing money. You get rich by becoming someone money is drawn to. And that starts in your mind. Thanks for being here. Now go do something with it.